Welcome to Life with the Spectrum. I'm your host, Gina Cavalli, and it's hard to believe, but our kiddos have almost been in school a half a year. Isn't that crazy? It's kind of crazy. And as we get ready to wind down 2022, for some parents, that means the rubber's hit the road. And we're finding out maybe that our kids are not necessarily getting the best education in that public school or the supports that they need. So I like to dive into what everybody wants to know about the schools that are around them that can help make a difference. And I've been so excited to get these guys on the show because I've heard from everyone, north, south, east, and west of the city. They all travel to Threshold Community School in Decatur. Welcome, Dave Nelson, the Executive Administrative Director. How was your Thanksgiving and all of your holiday festivities?
Thanksgiving was great. It's always good to get together with family, but I'm glad to be back at work.
You know, I've heard such wonderful things about Threshold Community. Can you give me a little bit of a backstory about this great school in Decatur?
Sure. So we are called Threshold Community Program. We originally were named the Community School. We started in 2005 primarily as a program for middle school and high school students. And then over the course of the early years of our journey, we realized that the need to support young adults who are transitioning to adulthood was as great, which is ultimately why we changed our name to reflect the fact that we work with post-secondary adults as well. But we got our start out of my personal journey. I have a son, my oldest born son, who's now 33, was diagnosed on the autism spectrum when he was 3. That precipitated a change for me. I went back to school and retrained as a mental health counselor, went into private practice, did a lot of work in the autism field for a number of years, and then ultimately, sort of as a function of my son's journey, decided that starting a program was the right thing to do in Atlanta.
How old is your son now?
He's 33.
And what is he into? Did he go to college? What's he into now?
He did. He had sort of a difficult adolescence, but ultimately kind of came through that with a lot of support from a lot of different areas. But he now lives in Connecticut. He went to college, got an undergraduate degree from Southern Connecticut State University. He's now actually in a graduate program, a graduate counseling program. So he aspires to work with young people with disabilities himself. He's very accomplished in a lot of ways. I think he still struggles with a lot of issues that would probably appear to most people as mental health issues at this point, but his roots are really in the developmental disability that he has struggled with his whole life.
Dave Nelson, Executive Administrative Director at Threshold Community. I know that you guys, or I see that you offer 3 types of programs. Would you like to explain a little bit about each one of them?
So we are first and foremost a school, and I would describe us as a therapeutic school, which is to say we are always keeping in the front of our minds the idea that social emotional development is really what underlies higher level thinking. It's what underlies relationships. It's what underlies purposefulness and functioning in the world. So we are a school and we support a lot of adolescents who are trying to complete high school. Some of those are degree-seeking students, and others are just working on more basic cognitive abilities or independent skills. We then also work with a lot of post-secondary adults, so people who have finished high school and who are deciding whether or not they can go to college, or trying to get work experience, or trying to move out of their caregivers' homes, or any and all of those things. So the young adult support work that we do is a significant part of of the work that we do. Both of those pieces, the school piece and the post-secondary young adult piece, we have tuition-based programs for those, but we also will work with people on an hourly basis. So there are people that go to different schools but come see us on an hourly basis for executive functioning support or mental health counseling or other kinds of things. And then kind of the third piece that we have going now that is newer is we actually have a residential support program in place. So we are supporting a growing number of people who are attempting to move out of their caregivers' homes to live independently or semi-independently, and we're providing a lot of support around helping them develop those independent skills and make that transition successfully. So that has some.
Is
That's
that diagnosis specific? Because I
Go
know
ahead.
that I read something like 90% of our young adults are living with aging parents, and obviously we need to start thinking of things to do for them when we're gone. Uh, does this offer them the support they need, like to take their finances and go in a different direction, to get them into some sort of community living type situation? When you mention that residential support, what does that day look like?
So, I mean, you're touching on, I think, what is an issue for any family who's supporting an adult with a disability, whether it's somebody on the spectrum or any other kind of disability. And certainly, as a parent of an adult trying to live independently, I can appreciate this at a personal level too. Um, there are a lot of issues involved in helping somebody transition to independent living, whether it's managing finances or getting access to whatever kinds of funding sources there are, and then just the practicalities of figuring out how to live independently. If somebody doesn't drive, how do they navigate transportation? And I think what I can say as a parent myself, an aging parent of an aging child, is that there's a lot of anxiety around, how is this person going to function when I can no longer help them? What we are doing, what TCP is doing specifically with regards to residential support, it sort of varies by individual, but right now what we are focused on is a group of young adults who are relatively independent, who are capable of living in places other than a group home. In other words, who can live with a roommate or who can live independently, but need support to make sure that that goes well. So that's the residential support that we're specifically focusing on now. But we also have a lot of people in our program who do not have that same level of independence. And I think the services that we provide around adult support will continue to expand.
When we get back to Life with the Spectrum, we'll ask Dave a little bit more about what that post secondary school looks like, coming up in just a minute. Welcome back to Life with the Spectrum. I'm Gina Cavalli. Here with me today is Dave Nelson, the Executive Administrative Director of Threshold Community. Dave, we were talking about the different programs TCP has to offer, and one was this post-secondary education. Some kids are able to go to college, some kids decide to get the certificate route, and some kids are just like, as soon as we get out of school, we're done.
Right, right.
So what does that post-secondary education type look like? What kind of day does that look like for a child or a young adult, I should say?
Yeah. So as you look at, and any of us that have raised children of any kind to adulthood, you know that there's just sort of a wide variety of independence capabilities. Some people, are very independent at a young age. Some people need more support over a longer period of time, and that's true of the people that we work with as well. Most of whom have a diagnosis of a specific disability, but a lot of times, I would say at a basic level, the support is what might be called executive functioning support, helping somebody sort of conceptualize a path, figure out the steps needed to accomplish, to work their way down that path. But also, I think at a more conceptual level, helping people figure out who they want to be, who they can be, and what they can do in life that is purposeful, meaningful, and rewarding. So a lot of the work that we do um, is around helping somebody figure out what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, how do they work around the weaknesses, and how do they strengthen the strengths. And when it comes to being out in the world, a story that I often tell is I have an older brother who dropped out of college with a semester to go, and my
Oh,
parents didn't love that decision.
I wouldn't either.
He went on to become a puppeteer. He's internationally known. He's had an enormously successful career. He never got a college degree, and it was a very sort of alternative path. But I think what happens in a lot of segments of society is we start thinking more and more narrowly about the pathways to adulthood. And the people that we work with need non-standard pathways to adulthood. So a lot of what we're doing is spending time helping people figure out what are the creative non-standard ways to adulthood that we can find for them. Sometimes that does absolutely involve going to college, that does involve getting a job, but a lot of times it just needs a more creative eye to help people figure out what they can do based on their strengths. I would say, the both from having raised a son on the spectrum, but also from the work that I've done, that a lot of people with disabilities who are getting services and getting support, they spend a lot of their lives sort of being told what they're not doing well. They're always needing to get help, always needing to improve things that they're doing. And so a part of what we really try to do at TCP is help people realize that they do have strengths, that they do have capabilities, and that if we can help them figure out how to leverage those strengths and capabilities, they can have a much more rewarding life and sort of get out of that kind of negative mindset.
And you mentioned the executive functioning skills and coaching that you give. Does that also apply to kids going to grade school and then on into high school? Do they get the executive function coaching, the mental health coaching, the therapy that they need through TCP?
Yeah, for sure. And I would argue that um, that what I mean, and this may be true for all people. I'm not going to go quite that far, but certainly the population that we work with really benefits from, I think, maybe holistic is the word, but certainly comprehensive is the word. It's not just about getting executive functioning support. It's not just about getting talk therapy. It's really more about figuring out how to be connected to other people in the world and how to both understand your strengths and weaknesses, but then also to use those strengths to be able to be successful. So, yes, people who are in middle school or high school or post secondary, doing post secondary work, all of those people are getting elements of all of those things that you mentioned: executive functioning support, mental health support, uh, transition to adulthood support, whether that's career or college support. Um, but underlying it all is helping people figure out how to build more meaningful and successful relationships with others. That ultimately, at the end of the day, is what it comes down to. If you can't stay connected to the people around you, your thinking is going to be more narrow. You're going to be more at risk for depression or anxiety or anger or withdrawal or all of those things. So we really spend so much energy in that comprehensive way of helping people figure out how to stay connected to the world.
How big is the school?
So we have 30 participants who are in a tuition based or basically full time program, and that's about half of those are school age and about half of those are adults. Then in any given year, we work with another 30 to 40 participants on an hourly basis. So that might be some afternoon social groups, that might be individual mental health counseling or college or job support. There's a wide range of kind of hourly support that we provide. So, when you look at the 30 tuition based and another 30 or 40 hourly based, and then the family members that we're supporting, we're actually supporting a fairly large community of people.
When we get back here with Life with the Spectrum, we're going to ask Dave some questions about what the kids think about Threshold Community. Stay with me. Welcome back to Life with the Spectrum. I'm Gina Cavalli. Sitting with me today is Dave Nelson, the Executive Administrative Director of Threshold Community in Decatur. I know families travel north, south, east, and west to come to Threshold, and we were talking about the size of the school, Dave. What are some of the big hurrahs? What would the kids say are the best part about attending Threshold Community?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that we hear consistently from the people that we support and their families. One is kind of what I alluded to earlier, this idea that when somebody comes here, they start to feel valued for who they are and what they bring to the situation, as opposed to simply feeling criticized or judged for what they're not doing well. So a lot of the work that we do is built around the interests and the strengths and the capabilities of the people that we serve. And sometimes when we start working with an older adolescent or a young adult, they're a little bit skeptical. They kind of don't believe that we actually are interested in the things that they're interested in or their strengths. But they gradually come to realize that we really are trying to help them be the best version of who they want to be. So I think that's a consistent piece of feedback that we get from people is that they feel valued for who they actually are. Um, Another thing that seems very consistent in what people say is they appreciate our overall philosophical approach, which is not a behavior focused approach. It is not a reward and punishment focused approach. We are really trusting and believing that people are trying to be the best people that they can be. And we spend a lot of time listening and being patient and really understanding what people are trying to say. Particularly, I mean, not everybody that we work with is on the autism spectrum, but certainly that's an a common diagnosis, certainly a common diagnosis, and I think most of the people that we work with are in that vicinity. Um, but one of the things that I think um, is sometimes difficult for people on the spectrum is this sense of being. I think Temple Grandin used the phrase once, being an alien, of feeling like they were not of this world. And we really spend a lot of effort trying to help people feel like they're in a world that they can actually connect to and relate to. The trick is, we're creating a community of support, but the idea is not that people come to our community and never leave. The idea is that people come to our community as a jumping off point to being in the larger world. But sometimes it is very beneficial to have a community that really embraces you for who you are and gives you a chance to figure out how much and how you can integrate into the larger world more successfully.
There's a reason that you guys keep getting great reviews, and parents are talking about Threshold Community amongst themselves, which is how I heard of you as well. It sounds like you deeply care for each one of the individuals that come through those school doors, and that you do treat them like people. And I love what you said about how sometimes people on the spectrum or people with any disability or diagnosis often get treated like you've done something wrong, or there's this sense of you need to work on that, you got to get better at that, and they're trying the best that they can. I often see that with my son who's on
Yeah.
the spectrum. He is trying his very hardest, and he's one of those kids who love to please adults. So when he sees that somebody's not pleased with an action or something that he's done, or a paper that he's written, or a book that he's read, and a test score, he often gets very discouraged. And it's almost like he internalizes that, and that can create problems a little bit later down the road. I know that for sure. So I love what you guys are doing there.
Well, let me speak to that issue that you're kind of hinting at a little bit, which is, we made a conscious decision to focus on this stage of life from adolescence into adulthood, in part because um, I think the risks of people growing into adults when they have disabilities are greater, and the challenges in supporting adolescents and young adults are greater as well. There are, I think, fewer organizations or practitioners who are comfortable working with adolescents and adults because you're dealing with issues like emerging sexuality, you can be dealing with difficult behavior, and you're no longer talking about a 5-year-old or a 9-year-old, but a 16-year-old or a 26-year-old. And so things get much more complicated. Um, but that idea that somebody is sort of intrinsically, not only intrinsically worthy, but also that they are trying to do the best that they can and that they want to be successful, that I will admit that that is sometimes a hard frame to hold, but I
So
think it's really, really essential,
yeah.
because you're right. These are people like everybody else, and it's not like people don't ever do the wrong thing. People can behave badly. People can make mistakes. It's not like we are completely sort of non-evaluative or non-judging about how people are functioning in the world. But we're also trying to really hold this idea of respect and autonomy for the people that we work with. And certainly over the past 20 years in the field of autism, as more self advocates have been more articulate about their experience and what their needs are in the world, I think we've really taken that to heart, that we don't want to be doing things to people. We don't want to be treating people without their consent. We don't want to be making decisions about their life without their involvement. So as much as we possibly can, we are really investing in being connected and collaborative with the people that we serve.
When we get back with Dave Nelson, we'll dive into one last meat and potatoes of it all before we let you go. Stay with me. Welcome back to Life with the Spectrum. I'm Gina Cavalli. Sitting with me today is Dave Nelson, the Executive Administrative Director at Threshold Community. Dave, I know every parent out there is wondering, how much is tuition?
It's a good question. Tuition is, I mean, it depends on your perspective. A full-time standard, school or post-secondary tuition for this upcoming year will be $40,000. That's an enormous amount of money compared to other programs in the area. It's actually, I think, a pretty reasonable amount. But there's no doubt that, and I know this, as a parent as well, that even if you think, oh, I can swing $40,000 for a year, you're really talking about a long period of support. And the idea that
Yeah.
somebody might need your support, that your child might need your support well into adulthood, makes that price tag, even more daunting.
And Dave, you guys take SB 10 money,
We
correct?
do. We take Georgia Special Needs Scholarship money. We are a Georgia Voc Rehab provider or vendor. We are a vendor for the Bobby Dodd Institute. So we work with all of the sort of financing agencies that we can. We have an increasingly large pool of scholarship funds and financial aid money. It's an important part of what we've been working on in the past several years. So we're doing everything we can to mitigate that long-term cost and expense for families. But we have to raise a lot of money every year. We have an active fundraising effort that goes on all the time.
Where can they find you online?
Thresholdcommunity.org. That's a great place to learn more about us. It's a great place to make a donation. I'm happy to give out my personal cell phone. You can call me and give me your money to help support this program. We do a lot of work. We do a lot of work writing grants and holding events and soliciting our community. It's in a sort of a typical private school model. A lot of fundraising occurs by asking the families that you're already serving. And we try very hard not to do that. The families are already under enormous amounts of stress. So I think it's just an added challenge for an organization like ours to find support from places other than the people that we're already serving.
Thresholdcommunity.org. Make sure you find them on socials and give them a like. And what's that phone number that they can call one more time, Dave?
404-308-8548 is a great way to get in touch with us, or info@thresholdcommunity.org.
Thank you so much. Dave Nelson, Executive Administrative Director over at Threshold Community. They are located in Decatur, and if you need them, they are there for you and your family. Thanks so much for being here again, Dave.
Thank you. It was great to talk with you, Gina.
One of the biggest questions for families with kids on the spectrum or with any diagnosis is really, what is the best school going to be for them? And it's not always public school. The supports, the modifications may not be in place. No matter how hard you try, you might need to look at going to Threshold Community or the Core School or the Cumberland Academy. There's schools north, south, east, and west, and in the heart of the city that can really make a difference in your child's life. All it takes is a little exploration on your part, and I know you'll find one that will make the difference for them. Whatever the case may be, I appreciate you coming to the show, plugging into episodes that you feel are appropriate for your family in the moment. We're going to continue to talk to leading experts, talk about the latest trends in therapies, and a little bit of spice along the way as we continue to live life with the spectrum. Till next time, we'll see you.